Today's reading comes from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9. Jesus and the disciples went on from there and passed through Galilee. Jesus did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, "The Son of Man is to be betrayed into human hands, and they will kill him. And 3 days after being killed, he will rise again." But the disciples did not understand what he was saying, and they were afraid to ask him. Then they came to Capernaum. And when Jesus was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" But the disciples were silent, for on the way they had argued with one another, who was the greatest. Jesus sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all." Then he took a little child and put it among them, and taking it in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me." Earlier this week, I saw a news story about two children, a 3-year-old girl and her infant brother, who had been left by their caregiver among the reeds along the Rio Grande. Both children were clean and fed and neatly dressed, and the little boy was buckled into his car seat. There was a note left under the seat to tell anyone who found them that they were siblings, that they were Honduran, and to please take care of them. The border agent was quoted as saying that the parents were irresponsible for abandoning their kids. But I immediately thought of Moses' mother, who, after hiding him from Herod's genocide of all boys under the age of 2, set him afloat in a basket in a river, praying that God would protect him. One imagines that the parent of these children felt the same way. What does it mean to be successful? That word, success, is often tied up in what we think are the most common expectations and understandings of what it means to do well. Success often means having a life that is Instagram ready, or it means being able to always put a positive spin on life's challenges no matter what happens, or it means having so much that we don't know what to do with it all, or being well liked, or seeming to have it all together. And even though I suspect that most of us understand that our perceived success has nothing to do with God's love for us, it's so easy to get caught up in the idea that a life that meets the world's definition of success indicates that God's favor is shining down on our special selves. But if there's anything that every single gospel tells us over and over and over again, it's that what makes sense in the world has nothing to do with how God operates in our own lives. Jesus has just told his disciples more than once that his earthly life will culminate in suffering and death, and that his ministry will not be a glorious and exalted one by worldly standards. That the power of God will show not in conquering the powers that be, but in conquering death itself. But the disciples argue amongst themselves about who is the best, because while they may have heard the words, they have not listened to the meaning. I should clarify that this is not Jesus' famous "let the little children come to me" moment, even though it sounds similar. In all 3 synoptic gospels, that's Mark, Matthew, and Luke, today's gospel story happens more or less the way Mark tells it in all 3 of those synoptics. That is, that the disciples are bickering, and Jesus puts what they see as a lowly child in front of them and tells them they will need to welcome even this weak, young, low-status being if they want to lead. In other words, it's not about them. In each gospel, a little bit after this teaching moment, the seemingly eternally dense disciples, who never ever listen, try to protect Jesus from children and get told off. And that's the story that has made it into multiple religious paintings. But back to our story. When we are listening to this story, we have to remember that while children might have been individually valued and loved by their parents in Jesus' time, they were seen as a burden by society. They couldn't work. They needed to be protected. They weren't independent enough to take care of their own needs. They were always getting into trouble. And they were therefore lowlier than slaves. They had no standing on their own. By taking this child and setting her among the disciples, Jesus is giving her standing and telling the disciples that despite how their community sees her, they are to treat her as if she were Christ himself. And that is huge. In a world that celebrates billionaires as they race to have bespoke experiences in space, but judges desperate parents for leaving their children among the reeds along the Rio Grande, Jesus' call to extend an enthusiastic welcome to those who we would call undeserving and unworthy resonates across the millennia. Just like the bumbling disciples who can't seem to open their ears to what Jesus is saying, we miss this repeated message that we are to treat those whom we perceive as lower than us with the same respect and compassion as we would the King of all creation. But here's the extra special key part of this passage. Jesus doesn't just tell us to welcome them, those other people out there. In this passage, Jesus lets us know that no matter how unworthy we think we are, no matter how well we hide our own insecurities and perceived insufficiencies, no matter how much we feel we haven't lived up to society's version of our best life now, Jesus welcomes us too. Even and most especially when we are sure we are inadequate or looked down on or unloved, Jesus takes us and tells us that we too are worthy of being welcomed as one of his own. That we are worthy of being loved. That we are worthy of being included and celebrated just because we're God's children and not because of anything we've done on our own. And in true Jesus fashion, he reminds us that we're not supposed to just take that newfound welcome and run with it, but that it is our call as Jesus' disciples to take that welcome and extend it to everyone we meet, to everyone who's excluded because of their socioeconomic status, education, sexuality, gender identity, skin color, language, vocation, or country of origin. We are called to love as Christ first loved us, generously, enthusiastically, even recklessly. It's not easy because it's countercultural. But you may have noticed that Jesus doesn't buy into the ways our culture constructs itself. Jesus calls us to live and lead not by our status, but in love. Because love, not status, not the hustle of life, love is the most powerful and enduring force there is. Amen.